All right, we're going to tackle this statement that was made by Creflo Dollar on his daily program. I'm going to just play a quick clip of it so you can hear what he said. And we're going to challenge what he had to say against what the scriptures say. Okay? Now I'm going to play this clip. And I want you to listen to what he's saying.
The Jewish law never justified anybody, never declared righteous anybody, that this Jewish law never gave life to anybody. The Bible tells us that the Jewish law never justified anybody, never declared righteous anybody, that this Jewish law never gave life to anybody.
Okay, now he said the Jewish law never gave life to anybody. Now, I'm not even going to deal with the Jewish law, but we're going to deal with the law of the Most High, because it's not the Jewish law, it is the Most High's law. So we're going to let the scripture speak, since Brother Creflo Dollar said that the law never gave life to anybody. So let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 30. And let's start at verse 10. And it reads, "If thou shalt hearken unto the voice of Yah, thy Elohim, to keep his commandments and his statutes, which are written in the book of the law." So now I want to pause right there and say the commandments and the statutes are written in the book of the law. So he says, if you keep his commandments and his statutes which are written in the book of the law, and if you turn unto Yah, your Elohim, with all your heart and with all your soul, for this commandment which I command thee this day is not hidden from thee, neither is it far off. It is not in heaven that thou shouldst say, who shall go up for us to heaven and bring it unto us, that we may hear it and do it. Neither is it beyond the sea that you should say, who shall go over the sea for us and bring it unto us, that we may hear it and do it. Verse 14, "But the word is nigh unto thee, in thy mouth and in thy heart, that thou mayest do it." Now, he didn't say that thou mayest say that the law is nailed to the tree, or that the law never brought life, but he said that thou mayest do it. Verse 15, he says, "See, I have set before thee this day life and good, death and evil, in that I command thee this day to love Yah, your Elohim, to walk in his ways, and to keep his commandments, and his statutes, and his judgments, that you may live." See that? That you may live. Now, Brother Dollar just told us that the law never gave anybody life. But here, who's the liar here? Is the Most High the liar? The Most High told the nation of Israel that if you do my law, you shall live. But Brother Dollar just said that the law never gave anybody life. So who's the liar? Okay? So he says, "In that I command thee this day, that I set before you this day life and good, death and evil. In that I command you this day to love Yah, to walk in his ways, keep his commandments, statutes, and judgments, that you may live and multiply. And Yah, your Elohim, shall bless you in the land where you go to possess it." Verse 18, "I denounce unto you this day that you shall surely perish, and that you shall not prolong your days upon the land where you possess over Jordan, to go to possess it. Verse 19, I call heaven and earth to record this day against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessings and cursings. Therefore, choose life, that both you and your seed may live, that you may love Yah, your Elohim, that you may obey, not break, not say the law is nailed to the tree, the law is a shadow, we don't have to obey the law. He said that you may obey his voice, and that you may cleave unto him, for he is thy life, and the length of thy days, that you may dwell in the land which Yah swore unto your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to give unto them. Now, Brother Dollar just told us that there was no life in the law. Okay? Let's go to Psalms chapter 1. Psalms chapter 1, verse 1. It says, Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the unrighteous, or the unlawful, nor to stand in the way of the sinners. What is a sinner? A transgressor against the law. Nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. Verse 2, but his delight is in the law. See that? He says his delight is in the law. Not that the law is no longer, we're not under the law, but he said his delight is in the law of Yah. And in his law doth he meditate day and night. Now he makes a promise. He says, when you do that, verse 3, he says, this is what the promise is. He shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, that bringeth forth his fruit in his season. See that? Why? Because you do what? Delight in his law. He shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of the water, that bringeth forth fruit in his season. His leaf also shall not wither, and whatsoever he does shall prosper. Verse 4, he says, the unrighteous are not so, but they are the chaff which the wind drive away. Therefore, the unrighteous shall not stand in judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For Yah knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the unrighteous shall perish. All right. Now let's go to Psalms 19. All right. Psalms 19, because Brother Dollar just told us that the law never gave anybody life. So we're challenging what was stated in his dissertation, that I was so disgusted in hearing him say that, because here on the Shabbat, I'm turning on spiritual things to get fed, and here I come with nonsense. Now, Psalms 19 and verse 7, and it reads, the law of Yah is nailed to the tree, right? No, he says the law of Yah is perfect, converting the soul. The testimony of Yah is sure. So the law is perfect, converting the soul. The testimony of Yah is sure, making wise the simple. Verse 8, the statutes of Yah are right. Not nailed to the tree, the statutes are right. Rejoice in the heart. The commandment of Yah is pure, enlightening the eyes. The fear of Yah is clean, enduring forever. The judgments of Yah are true and righteous altogether. More to be desired. Not saying it's nailed to the tree, but there are more to be desired are they than gold, than much fine gold, sweeter than the honey, and the honeycomb. Moreover, by them is thy servant warned, and in keeping of them there is great reward. There's your life right there. Okay? Verse 12, he says, who can understand his errors? Cleanse thou me from secret faults. Keep back thy servant also from presumptuous sins. Let them not have dominion over me. Then shall I be upright. I shall be innocent from the great transgression, which is disobeying the law. Verse 14, let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Yah, my strength and my redeemer. Now, let's go to Psalms 119. One more place. We're going to read because Brother Dollar told us that the law never brought us light. Psalms 119 verse 1. It says, blessed are the undefiled in the way who walk in the law of Yah. Read it again. Blessed are the undefiled in the way who walk in the law of Yah. Now let's go over to Joshua chapter 1. We're going to read verses 6 through 8. We are rightly dividing the word of truth because we have these teachers out here who's trying to tell you don't have to obey the Mosaic law, the Jewish law. And the scripture is totally in opposition to what they're saying that we're not obligated to obey. All right. Now, Joshua chapter 1, verse 6 through 8. And it reads, he says, be strong and of good courage, for unto this people shalt thou divide for an inheritance the land, which I swore unto your fathers to give unto them. Only be thou strong and very courageous, that you may observe to do, not to break, not to say it's not under the law, not to say law is nailed to the tree. He said, but that you may observe to do according to all the law, which Moshe, my servant, commanded thee. He says, turn not from it to the right hand or to the left, that you may prosper wherever you go. See that? So he said that he's talking about the law, to observe to do the law, that you may prosper wherever you go. Verse 8, he says, the book of the law shall not depart from thy mouth. Mr. Dollar, this book of the law shall not depart out of your mouth, but you shall meditate therein day and night, that you may observe to do, not to break, observe to do, according to all that is written therein. For then you shall make your way prosperous, and then you shall have good success. By doing what? Saying the law was nailed to the tree, or by observing to do all that's written. According to what the prophet Yehoshua, also known as Joshua, just said, he informed us that we are to observe to do all that's in the law to make our way prosperous. All right. Now let's go to Proverbs chapter 7. Proverbs chapter 7, verse 1. And it reads as follows. My son, keep my words. Not break them. Not say they're nailed to the tree. Oh, the law's nailed to the tree. The law's cruel. We don't have to keep that Mosaic law. The law was nailed to the tree, brother. He said, my son, keep my words and lay up my commandments with thee. Keep my commandments and live. Keep my commandments and live. And my law as the apple of thine eye. That's Proverbs chapter 7, verse 1 and 2. Now, let's go to Paul, who he is so adamantly quoting, who most people who today consider themselves Christians are mostly Paulinites. Paulinites. People who follow what they think Paul was saying. Okay? Most modern day Christians are not followers of the Mashiach, because the Messiah, he obeyed the law. He taught others to obey the law. But most in general, most believers today that call themselves Christians are Paulinites. They're following the epistles of Paul to their own destruction. Now watch what he says here. He says, Romans 7, verse 12. We did a lesson on this. You can check on our channel and you can watch the lesson on the finished works of Christ, Romans chapter 7. Here he says, verse 12, Romans 7, verse 12. Wherefore the law is holy. This is our beloved brother Shaul, saying that the law is not nailed to the tree. In this particular passage, he's saying the law is holy and the commandment is holy and just and good. So he said the law, Brother Dollar said the law was administration of death. We're going to read that in its proper context. But here, our beloved brother Shaul says that the law is holy and the commandment is holy and just and good. Verse 13, he says, was then that which is good made deaf unto me? He said, Yah forbid. Now, Brother Dollar just read over there where he said that the law was the administration of death. Here, Shaul said right here, which sounds like he's contradicting that statement that Brother Dollar read. Because here he said, was then that which is good made deaf unto me? He answers his own question by saying, Yah forbid. But sin that it might appear, sin working death in me. So what was working the death? Me disobeying the commandment. It wasn't the law that was the death. It was the disobedience that was the death. You see. So he said, but sin that might appear sin worketh death in me, that which is good, that sin by the commandment might become exceeding sinful. Okay, we're looking at this in English translation. It sounds like a tongue twister and it sounds very confusing, but the wages of sin is death. That is before Moshe was given a physical, tangible law to give to the nation of Israel. The wages of sin will always be death. So what is sin? Transgression against the law. When you transgress against the law of life, then you will die. So wages of sin will always be death. Verse 14, he said, for we know that the law is spiritual, he says. Not that the law is cruel as administration of death, but he said the law is spiritual, but I am carnal, sold under sin. You see, I'm carnal or fleshly. I am yielding to the temptations of the flesh, which is a transgression against the law of the Most High. That's what this flesh wants to do. Verse 15, for that which I do, I allow not. For that what I would that I do, I not. But what I hate, that I do. Verse 16, he says, if then I do that which I would not, I consent unto the law that is good. You see, this is our beloved brother Shaul saying the law is good. The law is holy. The law is good. And it is not the law that's death, but it is a transgression against the law that is the death. What is the schoolmaster designed to do? To teach us to stop sinning, which is transgressing against the law of the Most High. Now, let's go to James chapter 1. James chapter 1, verse 25, and it reads as follows. But whoso looketh into the perfect law of liberty, and continueth therein, he, being not a forgetful hearer, but a doer of the work, this man or woman shall be blessed in his or her deed. If any man, verse 26, among you seem to be religious, and bridle not his tongue, but deceiveth his own heart, this man's religion is vain. So now, that's what Jacob says, who the world calls James. Okay, Brother Dollar quoted 2 Corinthians chapter 3. Now, the dangers of reading one verse, which we're going to show you what he did. He read verse 7, which says, but the ministration of death, written and engraved in stones, was glorious, to that the children of Israel could not steadfastly behold the face of Moshe, for the glory of his countenance, which glory was to be done away. Okay, now, let's read the verse before that. Let's read verse 5. He says, not that we are sufficient of ourselves to think anything as ourselves, but our sufficiency is of Yah. Verse 6, who also had made us to be able ministers of the new covenant, not of the letter, but of the Spirit. For the letter killeth, but the Spirit gives life. That particular part right there is talking about the sentence of death. Okay? Now, which is a part of the law, but it is not the law as far as to obeying the commandments. So when we read the next verse, we understand now this is talking about the letter. The letter was the sentence that was passed for the transgression, or the death sentence, right? So now verse 7, he says, but if the ministration of death written and engraven stone was glorious, see that? The ministration of death written and engraved in stones, okay? Now, let's understand something real simple. Nobody had pens and pencils and paper. So anything that was written in stone, which is a figurative expression, meaning that this is the law of death. When the Messiah came, it says he made us free from the law of sin and death, which means what? We were delivered from the law of sin and death. What is that law of sin and death? What was that law of sin and death? We don't have time to go there, but if I was to go there, when a person committed a transgression by the judges or the mighty ones of Israel, the sentence was, in many cases, and a majority of the offenses, was death by stoning. Okay? So, when it says that the Messiah freed us from the law of sin and death, it meant that those who were the enforcers of the law who were transgressors of the law were soon removed from that position of being an enforcer of the law, who imposed the death sentence on the people for violation of the law. Now, most people don't have a problem with the government when the government enforces a death sentence. Nobody says nothing about we're not under the law, government. A person commits a third-degree murder or first, second, third degree or homicide, and they get convicted guilty of as charged, the government allows them to go through the death sentence, whether it be through gas chamber or electrocution or whatever the case might be. In the olden days, they would behead the person. They took that part out, but they maintained the other death sentence, the penalty of death. So we talk about the wages of sin is death. We talk about the law of sin and death. We're talking about the judgment that the people who were to enforce the law of death had violated, had fallen out of the favor of the Most High, and therefore lost that right to be judges on the earth. So now we understand now what he's saying in this 7th verse when he says the ministration of death. What is the ministration of death? Okay. Now, the word administration in the Greek text is the word diakonia, which it says an attendance as a servant, an aid or a service, especially of a teacher or of a deacon. So the ministration of, or as it should say here, the attendance of death, that word death is the word atanatos, which means to pass the sentence. So the administration, as we showed you, was those who was given to attend. Who was the ones that were enforcing the laws of death? When a person transgressed against the law, they brought them before the judges, before the elders, and they passed the sentence, and that person was destined, in most cases, death by stoning. And that's what Shaul was talking about, because Shaul was a doctor in the law. He understood the law. He was not just saying something or making something up on his own accord, but because he understood the ministration, the government that was given, that was authorized, that was spearheaded, that was established by the Most High himself. That's what he was talking about, the ministration of death. Carrying out the judgment for those who transgressed against the law. Now, so having said that, prayerfully, we cleared some things up. We have to be very careful when we say we're not obligated to obey the law. All we got to do is just have faith. Because we read to you earlier, we shared with you what Yaakov, one of the 12 disciples, said. James 2, verse 18. It says, yes, a man may say that he has faith and I have works. Show me your faith without your works, and I will show you my faith by my works. Okay? Verse 19, he says, you believe that there is one Yah. You do well. The devils believe and tremble. So he's saying, if you believe, then you do. The devils believe and tremble. Verse 20, but will you know, O vain man, he calls you, that faith without works is dead. You see that? Faith without works is dead. Let's skip down to verse 26. I'm going to close it right here. He says, for as the body without the Spirit is dead, so faith without works is dead also. So when a person says, I'm not saved by works, brother, I'm saved by grace through faith, remind them that faith without works is dead. And on that note, I'm going to close out. I'm going to say, may the blessing of the Most High Yah be with you and your family. Shalom, shalom, shalom.